Hey, Bruce.
What, Jeannie?
You know what this is?
This is the Energy Nerd Show.
Yeah, and it's our 90th episode.
Holy cow.
I know. We've been doing this for quite a while, and we thought it would be fun to kind of look back and see what we've done and talk about some new changes that we have coming.
Nice. What are your favorite episodes, Jeannie?
Oh my gosh, I have too many to count, right? But there's one that I was really sorry to miss. I'm sure I was off doing something really important, but I didn't get to interview Anna Summer.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was a great episode, and IRP is so important, and yet a lot of people don't really know what goes into an integrated resource plan.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what's contained in an integrated resource plan and what it can tell you about how to plan your electric power system. And for those who aren't familiar, an IRP, and I'll probably use that acronym going forward because it's much easier to say than integrated resource plan, is a techno-economic analysis of an electric utility's power system that is intended to develop a plan to acquire resources that are least cost and least risk. And that sounds amazing, right? That sounds really comprehensive. We can answer all the questions about risk to an electric power system and how to solve it. And the reality is that, like all things in life, IRPs are imperfect, and there are things that they can and cannot tell us.
Yeah, and those of us who spend our lives in IRP wormholes kind of think that everybody knows about it or should know about it or should be involved. So yeah, Anna did a great job of explaining what the opportunities are and what are the limitations and problems, and how we're going to take full advantage of the opportunity of IRPs to participate in the biggest decisions that are being made about climate impact investments, right? Utilities are allocating trillions of dollars of investment, and they could be going one direction or the other. They could be locking in fossil infrastructure for the next 30 years or more.
That's right. And you know a lot about it, and Anna Summer knows a lot about it. The folks at Synapse know a lot about it, and all that modeling that goes into commenting and giving expert testimony on these IRPs.
It's so fun.
It's fun. And also, 20 years ago, it was really hard for anyone to kind of get inside a utility model the way lots of staff are doing it now at Synapse. One thing that utilities are really good at is obfuscation. They like to hide everything. It's like black box and a mystery, and no one could possibly understand this, and this is confidential and it's trade secrets. But Anna just cracks the box open, and transparency in this kind of resource planning is so important. I don't think people, who don't do this for work have much of a chance to learn about it and get involved. More transparency in integrated resource planning is going to be better for everyone because these decisions affect everyone.
Yeah, the utilities are investing your money. They take ratepayer money and build all kinds of things.
Sometimes in communities where you live. So everybody should have a voice, or at least a sight line into what's happening. It's really exciting that it's happening.
And it's fun making Nerd Show episodes about it.
So more people will know about it and get involved.
Yeah, thanks Anna Summer for being on the show.
And, another really great guest, someone I've long admired and was so happy to have on the show.
Who's that?
Ben Lowe.
Oh, Ben Lowe.
Ben Lowe's episode was super long, but it had to be because it was stream of consciousness, everything. How long have you known Penn?
Since the 1980s, I think.
Penn knows a lot about environmental justice. He was one of the earliest voices on that in Massachusetts.
He was the director of ACE,
right?
Alternatives for Community and Environment. And in the episode, he talks about the arc of his career and the trajectory of kind of how one thing led to another. And it seems like kind of each thing he did kind of expanded his worldview in an interesting way.
So part of this goes back to we can all, think globally, act locally, right? One of the big tenets of the environmental movement. This is really that in a radical way, saying all of us can be change agents because we are all part of producing the realities that we're a part of. That doesn't mean we all have equal power. That doesn't mean that we can do it alone, but it means that, in all the spaces we are in our lives, whether that's in our families, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, there are different ways we can relate to each other that start to produce different ways of being, right? That we don't have to fall into these hyper-individualistic, competitive behaviors that, are what you might have to do if you're trying to compete in today's, economic markets, or what you might have to do if you're in the real politic of, today's State House or Congress.
So what was Penn talking about with like the realities, multiple things being true?
I think there's a lot of deep thinking there and a lot of experience. I kind of took part of the message as there's not just like one way that we collectively can think about things that's right. And there can be multiple ways, and that it's actually kind of healthy and good to have a lot of different perspectives and kind of individual mental models and collective mental models about, theory of change and what's going on and how we fit into that. The idea that we don't just think about one specific future that we want and one tactic for getting there. And it's better to think about things in a kind of a more inclusive and flexible way in terms of the futures that are possible that we can imagine and the things that we can do to move in good directions as people.
And then, speaking of environmental justice, there's the fascinating work of Destiny Knock, and she talked about energy burden and disparities in energy costs and energy use and energy burden. And I was really fascinated to see that differential. She talked about the different temperatures where people turn on their heat. I mean, that's essential.
If we are looking at when do people turn on their air conditioning units, if you look at the lowest income group and the highest income group, there's actually a 4.7 degree Fahrenheit to 7.5 degree Fahrenheit difference in outdoor temperature for when they actually turn on their air conditioning unit. So that's actually what we're saying is a hidden form of energy poverty.
A lot of the quantitative analysis of inequity in like energy bills and energy burden is about how much different people spend on energy as a percentage of their total resources or income. And it kind of flipped it around a bit and kind of looks at how much energy are people actually using in terms of where they set their thermostats.
Right. So it's not even just high energy burden for the same level of comfort. It's actually people are doing what they can to reduce their energy burden, but you can only go so far when it comes to having a healthy, comfortable home.
Thanks for being on the show, Destiny.
And in case you don't know, we are located in the Boston area. We're actually in Cambridge, but the work of Philip S. Gates has really impacted the city of Boston, and that work continues. So
Birdo 2.0.
Yeah, it passed. We were there when Mayor Jeannie signed it, and now we're on to a new administration, but they still want the work of Philip and the Synapse crew.
What this shows us is that different types of buildings tend to have different emissions intensity profiles. And within the various groups of buildings, there are some buildings that perform really well, that have pretty low emissions intensities. And there are some buildings that have really high emissions intensities. And this policy is an opportunity to drive down the emissions across the entire profile, and starting with the buildings that are the poorest performing, that have the most emissions over time. So this plot that we did helps us to understand where the emissions come from, what are the primary sources of emissions throughout Boston, and where the city should be focusing its efforts.
Mayor Wu and the city council are all behind the new building regulations, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot to be proud of there. This is the first city that has signed this type of ordinance.
Heading for net zero.
Well, it really is. So for a long time, we've been measuring and requiring buildings to submit their energy use, but now it's going to ratchet down.
So it's not just information anymore.
Right, it's action. So we like that.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, Philip.
And if you haven't seen that episode, be sure and tune in to Philip S. Gates and the Birdo episode.
Oh man, people should watch all the episodes.
Well, there are a lot, and they're all really good. So I really appreciate our guests, all of our guests who took their time. And we are lining up new guests. So if you haven't found your inner energy nerd, this is where to find it. Come join us, watch a few Nerd Show episodes.
Lean in, nerds.
And another cool thing is that we're changing up our format. I don't know if people had a chance to notice the new logo and title sequence and all that stuff. But it's not just our appearance that has changed.
Nerd Show 2.0.
Yeah, and so not just do you get to see us being silly here on your screen, but there will be an audio only version. So if you're driving or knitting or doing something else with your eyes, you could still listen to Nerd Show.
Yeah, Nerd Show needs more ways into your brain.
More in-person episodes, including an open invitation to come to Pearl Street Studios, where we have awesome sound equipment and we can interview you in person and it'll sound great.